John Chibadura was a farm worker before he became Mr. Chitungwiza. Before the records, the foreign tours and the packed shows, he had herded livestock, driven tractors and lorries, left school after Form 3, and moved between relatives after losing his mother as a child. Then he sang about love, marriage, children, jealousy, poverty and death, and Zimbabwe danced. More than 25 years after his death, the dancing continues. A long-running YouTube upload of Rudo Runakosha has passed 3.4 million views, while $5,000 Karura and other songs continue to reach listeners through platforms John Chibadura never lived to see. Why have these songs endured? What did they mean when Zimbabweans first heard them on Radio 2, records and cassettes? Why do they remain meaningful now? This is the Kopje Journal and Review Arts Desk. The Kopje Journal and Review Arts Desk examines the books, history, music, film, culture, biography, and memory of Southern Africa. Rudo Runakosha is the right place to begin. Love is precious. But Chibadura rarely presented love as a private feeling protected from ordinary life. Love entered a household. It met children, parents, work, money, marriage and disappointment. That is why the song could travel on a cassette in 1980s Chitungwiza and still reach a listener on a phone today. The delivery system changed. The negotiation did not. Chibadura understood that negotiation from a life that began far from a studio. He was born John Nyamukokoko on the 17th of February 1957 in Mashonaland Central, usually placed around Guruve. Zimbabwean accounts describe his parents as migrant commercial farm laborers with roots in Mozambique. That biography belongs to a larger labor history. Commercial agriculture in colonial Rhodesia relied heavily on black workers recruited locally and from neighboring territories. Historical research estimates that around 1980, Zimbabwe's large-scale commercial farms employed roughly 320,000 black workers. About 40% were of foreign descent, especially from Mozambique, Malawi, and Zambia. They planted crops, worked with livestock, drove farm vehicles, and supplied the labor beneath tobacco, maize, and other commercial production, often while living in insecure farm compounds. Chibadura was born inside that world. His mother died in 1962 when he was 5. His father remarried, and John went to live with his grandfather in Centenary, north of Bindura. The grandfather played mbira. Music therefore entered Chibadura's childhood through family and rural performance before it entered through radio or recording. Then the grandfather also died. John moved among relatives, looked after livestock, and learned early that a child's security could depend on which adult could take responsibility. Around 1968, he began learning the banjo. The following year, during a serious drought, he moved toward Darwindale and settled around Wagon Wheels Farm. He worked while attending school, but his formal education ended after Form 3. The surviving public record does not reliably name the school. He then worked as a farmhand, tractor driver, and lorry driver. Those facts do not make every later song autobiographical. They explain why the terrain was familiar. When Chibadura sang Namo Yatakawona, Urombo, or Nguva Yenhamo, poverty was not an economic term floating above the household. It could interrupt school, move a child between relatives, narrow the available work, and decide whether talent received a chance. Chibadura had lived inside that pressure. In February 1980, he travelled from Darwindale towards Salisbury, now Harare, with his friend Shepherd Chinyani. Zimbabwe was entering independence. Black families expected education, employment, housing, and movement to widen. Radio was powerful, and Harare's beer halls, hotels, and township venues offered a working circuit for musicians. Accounts connect Chibadura and Chinyani to the Holy Brothers, Tine Chikupo's mother band, performances in Mutoko, and the Mverechena band at Mverechena Hotel in Domboshawa. A contract at Mushandirapamwe Hotel in Highfield then brought them into a major black township world shaped by nationalist politics, working class life, beer hall culture, and music. The band that emerged from this route became the Sungura Boys. The Sungura Boys were an apprenticeship institution. Musicians learned guitar interplay, bass discipline, audience control, and how to turn live performance into records people would carry home. Chibadura's route into national music therefore ran through Guruve, Centenary, Darwindale, Mutoko, Domboshawa, and Highfield before it settled around Chitungwiza. Chitungwiza had been formally created in 1978 by bringing together St. Mary's, Zengeza, and Seke. It grew south of Harare as a large satellite and dormitory town. For families whose working lives were often tied to the capital, its population rose from about 173,000 in 1982 to about 275,000 in 1992. Workers travelled to Harare along Seke Road, while wages, transport costs, groceries, school needs and family disputes returned to St. Mary's, Zengeza, and the numbered units of Seke. Chitungwiza was a new urban Zimbabwe trying to become a home, that is the world, in which John Chibadura became Mr. Chitungwiza. One widely repeated explanation is that he was among the first prominent musicians to own a house there while the town was expanding. The nickname also reflected a deeper fit. His music sounded like the household life of people building marriages, raising children, commuting to Harare and stretching wages. By the middle of the 1980s, he had moved decisively from the Sungura Boys into the Tembo Brothers. Sources differ over whether the decisive formation came in 1983 or 1985, but the result is clear. The Tembo Brothers gave Chibadura his durable musical vehicle. Upenyu Hwandinetsa became an early breakthrough, while releases including Mudzimu Wangu, $5,000 Kurura and Sara Ugarik brought major gold disc recognition in the mid-1980s. His voice carried urgency. Lead guitar answered rather than decorated. Rhythm and bass maintained motion, while repetition gave the listener time to enter the argument. Mune Majerasi shows why he cannot be reduced to a social commentator who happened to sing. The title turns jealousy into a direct accusation, but the recording is also pure entertainment. The guitars circle and reopen the groove. A neighbor's progress, a better house, a job, a marriage, or a musician's success could alter relationships. Mune Majerasi enters that tension without becoming a sermon. The analysis survived because the entertainment worked. Radio expanded that achievement. Radio 2, now Radio Zimbabwe, reached homes, farms, buses, growth points, and townships in Shona and Isindebele. Its Coca-Cola Top 20 chart culture could turn a record into national conversation. Chibadura's songs featured in that world. A surviving 1994 Radio 2 Top 20 list places Rai Rai Vana at number 5. Rai Rai Vana Venue directs its instruction at adults, raise and guide children before the wider society has to absorb what the household failed to teach. Its chart position is revealing. A song about parental responsibility could compete as popular entertainment. Mudiwa Janet takes that family question into intimate love. The song addresses a partner who knew the man already had children and promised to care for them, but later rejected them. The injury is larger than romantic disappointment. The relationship has failed an existing household. Chibadura asks whether love can be trusted when it welcomes the adult but refuses the children attached to that adult. That question was meaningful, where death, separation, remarriage, and labor migration produced blended families. It remains meaningful for a parent in Chitungwiza, Johannesburg, Gaborone or Birmingham carrying children and obligations into a new relationship. Rudo Runakosha says love is precious, Mudiwa. Janet asks whether love can carry responsibility. Mukadzi. Wamakandirorera brings family authority into marriage. The title points toward a spouse chosen or secured through the decisions of others. Marriage could involve parents, aunts, uncles, advisors, and negotiations between households. Individual desire was important, but it did not always control the result. Then $5,000, Karura brings money into the center. The song stages a negotiation in which the young man is asked for $5,000 and 30 cattle. He cannot pay. Mary, the woman he loves, is effectively redirected towards someone richer. The humor is sharp. The class barrier is real. Rora, often called lobola in wider Southern African usage, is not best understood as buying a woman. It is a marriage institution through which families recognize a union and acknowledge obligations, often through cash, cattle, clothing, and negotiated gifts. But an institution intended to join households can delay or defeat marriage when the demand moves beyond the couple's capacity. The young man does not lose. Mary, because love is absent. He loses her because poverty has entered the negotiation. $5,000. Karura asks a question that remains current. When does cultural recognition become an economic gate? The number belongs to another currency. Error, but the pressure remains recognizable in Harare, Chitungwiza, Gweru, Mutare, and the diaspora. Young adults still compare love with employment, rent, ceremony, and the cost of establishing a home. The Zimbabwe that first heard the song was already discovering that independence would not automatically create enough secure work. A historical World Bank assessment found that after removing the exceptional early expansion in public administration and teaching, formal employment fell by an average of about 0.5% a year between 1980 and 1985. 1985, Zimbabwe had roughly the same number of formal jobs as a decade earlier, even though the labor force had grown. That is the national economy inside Mary's marriage. More young people had education and expectation, but the formal economy was not absorbing them at the same rate. Chibadura placed that employment problem inside a love song. Munhu Hana Chakanaka widens the moral field. Its title rejects the fantasy that people arrive without faults. Across Chibadura's catalogue, a spouse can love and injure. A parent can provide and fail. A relative can offer shelter and still create pain. A successful person can attract envy and also behave badly. The listener recognizes somebody. Sometimes the listener recognizes themselves. Then the country's pressure became harsher. The 1991 to 1992 drought damaged almost every part of Zimbabwean life. Historical World Bank assessments estimated that agricultural production fell by about 40%, maize yields by more than 75%, and manufacturing by about 9%. At the height of relief operations, roughly 40 to 50% of Zimbabwe's population received food assistance. In Seke, Mbare, Murehwa, Guruve, or Gutu, a failed maize harvest raised food pressure. A rural household called a relative in town. One wage supported more people. School fees competed with groceries, marriage was postponed, and children moved between households. Now Namo Yatakawona and Urombo sound less like generalized sadness. They sound like recognition, economic. Adjustment deepened the strain. Between 1990 and 1994, real formal sector wages fell by about 30%. Employment grew by roughly 1.6% a year, while the working age population expanded by about 2.8%. A person could remain employed and still become poorer. This is not simply a Sungura story, it is an archive of working Zimbabwe. The songs were meaningful then because people heard their households inside them. They remain meaningful because love still meets money, children still test relationships, envy follows visible progress, and employment does not guarantee security. Chibadura's geography also extended beyond Zimbabwe. Mozambique became one of the strongest parts of his career. That return carried historical weight because his parents were described as Mozambican migrant farm workers. The child of a labor route later crossed the same border as a major artist. Accounts describe Tembo Brothers' performances in Mozambique drawing crowds in the tens of thousands, including reported audiences of about 40,000. Chibadura also toured the United Kingdom and appeared in the broadcasting world around Andy Kershaw. His music travelled because the household questions travelled. Love, Rora, children, envy, work and death were not confined to Chitungwiza. Then comes Zuva Rekufa Kwangu. The easy question is whether Chibadura predicted his own death. The stronger question is why mortality could sit inside popular entertainment without feeling out of place. Death rearranges a household. It can remove an income, move children between relatives, expose property disputes, and turn illness into a financial crisis. Chibadura had lost his mother and grandfather early. That does not make the song simple autobiography. It places mortality inside a life that had already seen how quickly family structure could change. Public accounts describe serious illness, property being mortgaged and possessions being sold to meet treatment costs. The medical details are not fully consistent, so this episode does not claim a diagnosis the record cannot securely establish. John Chibadura died on the 4th of August, 1999. He was 42. Zimbabwe lost the future work of an artist who had moved between Sungura, rumba, traditional elements, and reggae. His death also exposed the weakness of the music economy around its stars. Record sales, radio success, and foreign tours did not automatically create health security, durable royalties, or protection for the artist's family. The man who sang about economic vulnerability was not protected from it by fame. Yet the catalogue kept moving. Rudo Runakosha moved from records and cassettes to compact discs, YouTube, and phones. $5,000. Karura found listeners who no longer use the same dollar, but still understand the cost of building a household. Mudiwa Janet still asks whether romantic love will accept children and existing responsibility. Ray Rai. Vana Venue still places character formation inside the home. Mune Majorasi still recognizes the damage created by envy. Nhamo Yatakawona and Urombo still speak to people whose work has not produced security. Zimbabwe still listens because Chibadura did not separate joy from pressure. People fall in love while money is short. They marry while work is uncertain. They raise children inside incomplete households. They watch neighbors move forward. They lose people. They continue working, and they still dance. Now you can hear John Chibadura not only as Mr. Chitungwiza or the voice behind old hits, but as an artist whose life, songs, and historical world formed one connected archive. The Kopje Journal and Reviews verdict is that Chibadura endured because he converted the pressures of working Zimbabwe into music without removing their human complexity. His biography explains why he knew the terrain. His songs show how he translated it. Chitungwiza, the commercial farms, Radio 2, drought, and the changing household explain why the country understood him. Which John Chibadura song carries the strongest memory for you? What part of Zimbabwean life do you hear inside it? Tell us in the comments. We read all comments. Thank you for watching. If this cultural profile was useful, please like this video. This is the Kopje Journal and Review Arts Desk. The Kopje Journal and Review Arts Desk examines the books, history, music, film, culture, biography, and memory of Southern Africa. If you are new here, Subscribe to the Kopje Journal and review Arts Desk for future profiles that connect Southern African artists, songs, biographies, and the historical worlds that made their work meaningful.